Greetings. I'm Mark Carbonell, Managing Director of the Midwest Minority Think Tank. I urge you to join my co-host Leslie Wilson and I for a most enlightening assessment of the value of your vote. This 1-hour special will present a unique historical perspective on the value of your vote by defining the value of the process as well as the value of the individual vote. Leslie and I will be joined by a special guest to look intently at the question, what is the current value of your vote? Who sets the value of your vote? Are you renting your vote or selling your vote? Are you bargaining and negotiating with your vote? You do not want to miss this presentation on Wednesday at 9 o'clock p.m., October 14, 2020. Thank you. Hello, I'm Mark Carbonell, Managing Director of the Midwest Minority Think Tank, and welcome to this special presentation of the value of your vote. And tonight we want to examine the value of your vote from various perspectives, and also we want to see the enlightening that can come forth through the education process, and as we reevaluate what we call value and how we make the assessment of that value. And I'm joined tonight with Leslie Wilson from Columbia, South Carolina, and she will be on shortly. And we will be discussing 4 unique dimensions of the value of your vote. In fact, I won't delay any longer. I'm going to bring Leslie in right now. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I am well. I'm excited about the topic that we have for tonight and all that we're going to cover, and the special guest that we have with us tonight, and also it's open to the public to join in and present their questions, present their views, and I look forward to a great evening.
Yes, I love what you proposed to talk about the value of the vote, just certainly suggesting that our votes have value. And so we see on the vote, we see many approaches and many slogans about it. But when we talk about the value of the vote, I think there's a lot of depth in that topic. So looking forward to talking about it.
And as we look at tonight's broadcast, I want to put the 4 areas that we will cover tonight, and they are: what is the current value of your vote? Who sets the value of your vote? Are you renting your vote or selling your vote? Are you bargaining and negotiating with your vote? Did we miss anything? Is there more that we can add to this, Leslie?
I think that this gives us a good foundation to have some good conversation, good dialogue. I mean, the first question alone, when you certainly presented this, I thought it was just a different perspective to really begin to look at as we move into this very important election, but also in the elections that are not the general elections, but what's going on in the local communities as well. So yes, I think we have a plate full here.
And tell us about our special guest. I know she's not a mystery related to you, so you just give us a little brief bio. So when she comes in, we want her to come right in on the target. And
Absolutely. Yeah, we're excited to have Ernestine Middleton with us. Ernestine is the CEO of Middleton Resource Group. And we're just going to be able to search Ernestine's thoughts about this topic. She certainly is very active in local politics and social issues in the Columbia area, and he really has lived in several regions of the country, and also is the wife of the former Listevelt Middleton, who was a very much an activist in our community and is well known throughout the world. And so I'm sure her discussions with Listevelt have lasted through the course of time. Her son is very involved in politics as well. So she brings another point of view to some of this discussion. So we're looking forward to having Ernestine. So welcome, Ernestine. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to it. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will have Ernestine with us. Welcome back. Actually, I am Mark Carbonose, and I'm not Leslie Wilson. Leslie Wilson will be joining us shortly. But I want to prepare us for this first question. And what is the current value of your vote? I want to quote something from Aretha Franklin, one of her uh, hits when in the 60s. She said, "Stop being what you're not. Harm and cruel is the man who pays too much for what he got." And I know our historical link to the ballot and how we arrived at the ballot and the fight that had to go on and people who died to get the right for our people to vote. And now with the current political situation and the way that some people feel that we are taken for granted or we are being ignored, it brings me back to the last line that Aretha said in that song. Uh, did we pay too much for what we got? And we'll start there, Leslie. Did we pay too much for what we got?
I think in some instances we have. I think in some instances we have. I think we have drank the Kool-Aid for certain uh, parties and certain leaders, believing the rhetoric without really digging in and finding out, what's in it for me, what's in it for my community, what's in it for the my profession, and really not taking a holistic look at the whole picture of what a candidate will bring at every level of government. And so I think that's what I liked about this discussion is because it gives us an opportunity to really delve into some of that and really look at the reality of what has happened with the value of our vote. Because a lot of people have taken our vote for granted, not just nationally, but in local elections as well. And so I think the one size fits all is a concern. And I'm hearing a lot of that in across different communities.
And you're absolutely correct on that. And the fact that we have so many voices now vying for our attention, the plurality of faces and the plurality of candidates of color does not, well, I should say, does not, has not translated into the advancements for the totality of our community. And I think that's what requires us to do, as we stated in the opening statement, make a reassessment of where we are. I don't want to leave our guests out, so I'm going to bring in Sister Ernestine Middleton,
Well, hello,
and
and thank you for having me. Thank you.
so
And
we want you to feel free to give us your insight, and we respect that, and we want to hear it.
well, I agree with what both of you just said, and I think that we bear some responsibility for that.
Mm-hmm.
We have, as a people, voted as a monolith, and when you do that, people take your vote for granted. We haven't required anything for our vote. And it's almost like when you go to the polls, they automatically know that you're going to belong to one party or the other. So we've got to do a lot of work in educating our young people and changing the minds of some of our existing voters on getting some value for your vote.
I appreciate that the fact that we have to take some responsibility ourselves on all levels. Uh, it's like we were so eager to become participants in the system. I think we missed the civic lesson that representatives are supposed to represent our ideals, our position, and as a result, the roles got reversed from our elected officials representing us and our appointed officials representing us until they began to feel that we represent them. In other words, they began to tell us what they were doing
Mark, I
and made us
can't hear you.
okay. I have all the Leslie, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Well, what we're saying, We'll make whatever adjustments we have. Check your microphone, Ernestine. But we have to find a way to bring everybody into the position, whereas that the responsibility is then removed from the representatives, not reflecting what the people want, and so the people then have to take that responsibility of instituting to them what it is that we want from them.
And one of the things, true to form is that a lot of times the elections become a popularity contest.
Yeah.
And so people are not always expecting to get anything except that their friend, colleague, or church member, is going to be elected without requiring, as you've said, as both of you have said, anything except the ability to really know what that person stands for. I think morally and ethically that is important. But if we're not able to dialogue and begin to talk about, where am I in this, where does this affect me, this election, and your role in government, because every role affects us. And we have to begin to, as we currently are talk about the civics lesson, what we miss in terms of each branch of government and each, local elected official and the responsibilities they have in that role. And so how do we begin to delve into that a lot more and see in our particular district or region who those elected officials are? Many times we go into elections without even knowing which region we're in, who the candidate is for that region. There's some basic things that we have to, and I say we, I'm talking we of the broad we, and that's across, race, generation, and everything. So, but we have to know who they are and what they are able to do and what they're saying they're going to do. And then how do we hold them accountable after election? Because we do give them a pass very often. They get elected and we don't hear anything from them. Nothing meaningful is done until the next election. And they're coming back with the same story. So it's the whole, adage we have, they're doing the same thing, and then we expect something different. So I think Ernestine is right. We hold some responsibility in that.
And Leslie, to follow up on that, I agree totally. As Christians, we're taught to study to show yourself approved. We don't study the issues, we don't study the candidates, and it's just like you say, it's a popularity contest. I think we do a little bit better with the presidential election, but when you go down the ballot, there are a lot of people that impact our lives that are on the local level, on the state level, that we really need to know exactly where they are on the issue and where we are.
Absolutely.
We need to know what the issues are that are really going to impact our life. Voting or the election impacts taxes, healthcare, education. Every aspect of our life in America is basically impacted by the elections, the free elections that we hold. So we really do need to put some skin in the game by at least being well-informed, a well-informed voter that can go there and discuss and debate issues with each other to decide. I can't tell you how many times I have not had my friends call me up. Ernestine, who should I vote for? On simple things like the school board. Now, the school board may not be a big position, but it's a very important position because who you have on that school board affects the education that your children receive in your particular district. So you need to know what these people stand for, other than, just like you said, you see them when there's time to be reelected and you don't follow, how did they vote on this issue? You don't show up at any of the meetings that you can show up at. You're not engaged. And that is the value of your vote. It's not just going in there once every 4 years or once every 2 years and voting. It is being an active participant in this process.
That's a good segue into our second question. Who sets the value of your vote? And I'm before we go into who sets the value of your vote, I think we did so marvelous in becoming part of the campaign. I think we love to be part of the campaign. We do well. We get out to vote. We put out the signs. We make the speeches. We love to be a part of the campaign. We love to be a part of that energy that surrounds the campaign. But once the campaign begins to take on substance, that's where we're missing. We accept slogans. We accept the campaign rhetoric. We buy into the same three issues that I've heard all my adult life that since I've been participating. We're going to have on both sides of the aisle. We get promised better schools, safer streets, and more jobs.
Right.
And so, and we keep buying into that same rhetoric. And if it's working, why would you change it? Why would you bother to change it? And so, we need to understand now with that who sets the value of your vote. And we start with you, Ernestine. You're doing such a marvelous job.
Absolutely.
Well, for me, I take it personally. I set the value of my vote. It's very important to me because I'm not only looking at my lifestyle, but the lifestyle of my family and for generations to come. How is my granddaughter, my almost 2-year-old granddaughter, how's things going to be for her 20 or 30 years from now when we have a Supreme Court that looks the way it does or changes rules and regulations that have been in place? So I set the value of my vote. I make sure that I do vote. A lot of people, and it's a shame to say it, but they say tell the truth and shame the devil. I heard that almost 90% of the NBA players, now these are very wealthy young men, had never voted.
Mhm.
They place no value on that. And then most of the time you hear from older people that, well, our ancestors went through a whole lot. They were lynched, they were beaten, and that's very true. We owe them a debt to make sure that we do vote. That's true. But we also owe the future generations in our current situation some value to go out and vote and not just sit back and say, well, it really doesn't impact me. Because I've heard that too. Well, it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah, just to concur with regard to the majority, the numbers of people who don't vote.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at some data recently that looked at a particular candidate, and he won, and then they looked at a comparison at the number of African Americans specifically who did not vote.
Mm-hmm.
And the numbers of African Americans who did not vote in those states where this person won would have made a lot of difference. And so not only, do we need to look at setting the value of the vote, but we need to understand that other people are counting on us not to vote.
Exactly.
And so, we're counted out. So having some skin in the game, being an active participant and bringing those issues to bear that are important to our global community, as well as our local communities, and then our families as well, and generations to come. And so, we have to begin to inspect what we expect.
Right.
And we do have to ask the hard questions. If it concerns us, somebody told me recently that if we have a particular issue that we're concerned about, if we call and we talk to 10 people and they have the same issue and everybody calls, that particular candidate is going to get up off their, the tush, and they're going to pay attention to that. So
Right.
10 people may not seem like a lot, but if 10 people represents 1,000 people that may have that same view, it at least gives them something to get involved in, and then start doing some digging enough to be able to get a responsible answer back. So I think
that's the 10
vote is really set by our participation
the
in that
10
voting process, in that
the
election,
10 the 10 to 1 ratio
process.
the 10 to 1 ratio the 10 to 1 ratio is very essential to any campaign. In my own political consultant days, whenever a candidate shows up and there's 100 people in the room, it's like they are addressing 1,000 people. Because as you said, the 10 to 1 ratio kicks in. So that is the value of the rally. The rally then gives an assessment of how many people are actually going to hear that message in one form or another. And that's why the sound bite became so popular, so that people could remember 3, 4, 5 words. And so when they repeated those 3, 4, 5 words, the that 10-to-1 ratio, their message does not get lost. Uh, Keep hope alive, hope and change. Yes, we can. So if those 3, 5, 7 words, uh, whatever that particular campaign chooses, that's what goes into it. It's not, can we find something that rhymes? We find something that the people can remember and repeat
Right.
verbatim, so that they can identify those words with the particular individual. And once again, over the years and over the course, we've gotten a lot of key individuals in positions. And I've heard it so many times. Well, first, if you just help me get my foot in the door, help me get in, then I can change things from the inside. But a system is never meant to break itself. A system is designed to perpetuate itself
Absolutely.
and to get stronger. And so if it takes the best minds from any community, and that's what diversity is about. It's not about inclusion. It's about extracting the best mind and bring them into a particular system. And then when they embrace that particular system, it will work to keep everyone else in the status quo. Let's take a break. And then when we come back, we're going to pick up with this. I am very excited with what we're hearing thus far. Let's take about 60 seconds and we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Mark Carbone, Managing Director, Midwest Minority Think Tank, and we're talking about the value of your vote. And we are joined tonight by Sister Ernestine Middleton, and my co-host for tonight, Leslie Wilson. And we are going through a reassessment of the value of the vote. And I asked this next question, and are you renting your vote or selling your vote? And it's like having an expensive watch that you no longer are fond of. You've had it, but it's very expensive, but you don't wear it anymore. So it's in the drawer. It's in your jewelry box. You're not going to throw the watch away because you don't like it anymore, but you're not going to give it away. And I find that a number of people now realize the history of how we acquired the vote, but they're not willing to use it now because they don't feel that there's anything that they're going to get from that vote.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing anything.
Are you hearing me, Leslie?
I am.
Well, Ernestine, we're going to have to do some technical adjustment on your end. I'll
can't
come
hear
right
Mark
back.
at all.
Okay, so one of the things, Mark, with regard to renting or selling the vote, I think the the thing I was thinking about as we were talking about that is that yes, we can talk about what we are currently feeling about renting or selling our vote, but I was thinking about the Civil Rights Act and the law, the legislation around renewing our right to vote. And so that is a missing piece of this whole puzzle that sometimes we forget, that when they passed the legislation for us to vote, there were conditions. They put stipulations and they put a timetable on it. And so every, I forgot how many years it is, excuse me for not remembering, they have to go back in and vote. And to be able to, so that they have to go back in and vote on passing the next 10, 20 years or whatever it is. I know it's more than that. So are we selling or renting it? I think it sounds like it's on rent, at least based on that. However, our active participation in it in terms of individual votes really has to do with the value that we put on it. And I believe that there are cases where people are renting their votes because, again, it's the activities, the barbecues, fish fries, the beer bus and everything else that people come out to. And many of them never hear what that particular candidate is even talking about because, it's a social event, but also not really understanding that our votes are not for sale and they should not be. Right now, as I was sharing earlier, I'm hearing a lot of people talking about not voting because they don't like either candidate. And I'm thinking to myself, what? But I had to step back and say, you know what? People are entitled, to their own opinion and make their own decisions about it. But I was really sort of taken aback, when I know that for a lot of the young people in my family, as soon as they were old enough to vote, that was the first thing they did. And that was the first thing because we talked about it beforehand. You're eligible to vote now. You're eligible to go into the military. So would you go into the military and then not exercise your right to vote? So, in that way, that became one of those civic lessons. And then to understand that it's important to vote because for me, if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. If you don't vote, then you don't need to complain. Nobody's going to listen to you because they can go back and look at your record and see that you didn't vote, a particular segment of the population. And I was looking at one of the series, I think it's one of the On the Vote series, and he talked about 16 million. We have 16 million African-American females. Our votes are valuable in these elections. And so they should not be for sale or for rent. They should be for the quality that they are and what we bring to each party or each individual and each candidate. We're getting something for it. They're not for sale. They're not for rent. So that's just my take on that.
Can you hear me, Ernestine? You have to relay to Ernestine for me that it's her time to go, Leslie.
Okay. All right, I will. Yeah. So anyway, so Mark, what is your take on it? I mean, what are you hearing from people and what examples do you have or have you seen that really, stirred that question up in you?
Well, I've a lot of young people and not so young people have found that things haven't changed for them. And what I'm hearing often is, as a result of the 8 years of the previous Democratic administration, that we didn't get anything. So why should we expect anything from someone who's not like us? And so you have that attitude that it really doesn't matter because nothing changed, and
Mm-hmm.
all it does is introduce a lot of different arguments about the personalities and the individual, and not about the system itself. And so, if you criticize, there was a time that we could have a political discussion, but now if you criticize someone that I like because it has become a
Yeah.
popularity contest,
Mm-hmm.
now it becomes volatile in terms of the hyperbole that's associated with just a discussion that, hey, I don't like what took place, but no, it's now you don't like that individual.
Mm-hmm.
It has just dropped down to such a low level now that you can't even have an opposing view with someone out without them being totally upset.
And Mark, in that way too, I was thinking about if we talk about the status quo, doing the same thing, getting the same thing, and not really holding people responsible and not, digging into what their beliefs are and what their thoughts are about certain issues that are important to us, as Ernestine brought up earlier, then it's not a rent or sell, but it still is. When we raise the questions and ask the hard things, then we should expect an answer back that resonates with us. And if we don't get that, then, again, it's like, do you go on and vote because, it's a certain party or a certain um, demographic or whatever, rather than really looking at, I'm going to look at the candidate for what they bring in terms of my larger view on this particular topic. So I'd like to hear from the audience as well. We do have an opportunity for you to join us in the chat and put some questions in, and also your opinions, and we'll read those off so that we're able to hear more from you about this particular question, because I think it's a very important question for us to think about. Are our votes for sale? And our individual votes, but our collective vote as Black women, as Black men, as young people, as African Americans, and so forth and so on. So thoughts on that, please join us.
Well, while they're thinking that, Leslie, unfortunately, I'm having some kind of technical difficulties. I could not hear anything that Mark was saying, but I do know what the question is, and I'll just say this: there is a history among our people of selling the vote, having politicians come in and talk to certain members of the community and getting them to say, oh yeah, I can deliver so many votes. And that's where all of those things that you talked about, the fish fries and all that stuff, started coming up from that history. But at this point in time, no, our votes are not for sale. We're a lot more educated in the way that we approach voting. We see the value of it. And so we're not going to either sell it or rent it. And now, because of formats like this, we're being able to hold people accountable for what they say they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Even in some of the commercials that are being put out, they're playing the records. They're playing the people's words, the things that they've said about what they promised to do, or said one thing and now they're totally turned the other way and doing something totally opposite. So there is some accountability, and at the same time, while you've got some accountability going on, you've got a targeted, well-planned effort to devalue the truth and call it fake news, call it anything but what it is, and to manipulate people in a way that they don't know what to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so some of them actually back out of the whole process because they don't trust anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to do better than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I repeated anything that Mark
And part of having some skin in the game really takes place in being able to listen and stay involved long enough to find out the answers that you want, or get something close to those answers, that you want. And it's when we don't participate in that process, when we hear the things that we don't want to hear, how do we dig a little deeper, and how do we find out? And we can always pick up the phone and call. They have staffers that all they do is answer questions from constituents. We can call Washington, D.C. We can call our local state house offices. They have staffers just to hear what we have to say. So the process is there for us. We're just not active participants in the process.
And that's
so, yes.
Go and I remember, I remember when I first started working for state, and I worked for the human resource system, the merit system. I used to get a letter it was a cover letter with the constituent's letter from Strom Thurmond every single day. If you wrote Senator Strom Thurmond and said you needed a job, then he sent you a letter, and his staff made sure that you got a response. And we had to respond to that. He had one of the best constituent services ever.
But, again, that's a classic example of, you get out of things what you put into it.
Exactly.
And, a lot of times, and I'm guilty of it, just like the next person, of, listening to a lot of the rhetoric without digging a little deeper to find out, is this something that I can support? Do I believe in this? Or does someone else have a different opinion or approach, or can I sway that candidate?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the other thing that we have an opportunity to do when we bring to bear, you know, a multitude of people that are concerned about it. I remember when they were looking at faith-based organizations and being able to fund faith-based organizations outside of the structure of the organized church. You know, a lot of nonprofit organizations had that faith-based approach. And because they took their programs and took to their candidates their concerns about being able to get funding and not being written off because there was some violation of reference to faith or Christianity or, you know, Islam or whatever. But faith-based organizations is very broad in that it actually will fund an organization that designates themselves as a faith-based organization with principles and morals and values and those sorts of things. And so, as we're talking about that, there again, these are ways that we can not sell or rent our votes, but certainly have a voice in, you know, making an impact and being heard. You know, being heard and bringing some accountability to that candidate to let them know we're watching you.
Right.
We're watching you.
Right.
And a lot of them get off so light they're in for years and years and years and years. And then we sit back and say, they've been in there for 50 years. They haven't done a thing. But that's not the candidate's fault. That's not their fault.
It's always it's like let's change
right?
let's change
A lot
Congress.
of times it definitely is. And then you do have some very good representatives.
Absolutely.
I mean, since I mentioned Strom Thurmond, I'm gonna have to mention Jim Clyburn, who is very responsive to his constituents. And I'm not trying to get party based here, but you do have good services. You know what's going on, and you know what is happening with your vote when you support a candidate like that. You see him literally fighting for you. So absolutely. I had to throw that in there.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, there's a key factor here that both ladies have brought forth, and I'm very pleased to have heard both sides of it. And what we're having in terms of some technical issues, I'm not able to hear Ernestine, or she's not able to hear me from time to time. But there's one thing I want to mention here when it comes to our ability to reach others through the campaign and the constituencies and the staffs of these various individuals. We have to know that they are there to serve us. They're there to serve the community. They're there to serve their constituents. And so it's learning what those particular roles are so that we're going to the right person to address our issue. And so when we come back, I want to talk about the issues that each person or each community had, and that we should vote our issues. And then I'll address how we can address those issues and how do we get those issues before our particular representative. Welcome back. I'm Mark Carbon, Managing Director of Midwest Minority Think Tank Foundation. And one of the things that that goes with the value of your vote is understanding how do we get the representative back in their particular position where they are representing us. I propose that in every community, whether it's a county or city or congressional district, that the unity begins with assessing what 10 things, I'm just using an arbitrary number, what 10 things affect that particular area, and compile that list and have an almost, instead of the town hall meeting where the candidate tells the community what he or she is going to do for the community, we present our list of 10 issues or 10 concerns and ask them to check the box. And then whether whatever party affiliation they're with, or if they're an independent candidate, we should vote for the individual. We should vote for the one who has the most check boxes relating to our issues. And that's where I feel that we should begin. I
Okay.
hope you were able to hear me, Ernestine.
And so with that being said, I think that that's a great idea. It's a novel idea, really. And that is exactly what we need to be doing. They talk about, I'm the people's mayor. I'm the people's mayor. I'm the I represent the community and their wishes, but they can't represent our wishes if we don't let them be made known. And so part of what you are proposing in terms of taking those 10 issues, that's what they do in the church meetings. They, bring the issues to the church meeting, and they have the meeting before the meeting, and then they designate which people are going to speak, and represent this issue. Then this is going to come back and amen it, and they get that going. But it's the same process because it's a democratic process, so we have the right and the liberty to express our opinions. And so without that, they don't know what people want if we don't tell them. So I like that idea. And I think it's not a novel idea, but it's certainly one that could be effective in the electoral process.
And it's certainly one that everyone can employ in any part of the country. And so what we have is a lack of a continuity between the candidate and the people. And so when the people begin to say to the candidates, these are our concerns.
Mm-hmm.
We will support whoever takes a stance for us, and not let the candidate shape the issues. That's the problem. This whole situation has gotten out of balance, whereas the candidates are shaping the issues rather than the people shaping the issues, and then the candidate is to follow. I'm so sorry that we're having difficulty with Ernestine.
Ernestine?
I'm sorry, I could not hear a word he was saying. So you're gonna have to kind of summarize it for me so I can make a comment.
Check your text. Thank you. So, but Mark, I think that again, the idea that we are able to become that our voice becomes our vote, that what we take in there and what we get for it is what we've asked for, then we'll make decisions that way and not just a sort of a monolithic vote for a particular party or region or anything, that we actually are asking for something and we've made it known to that candidate. And when they don't produce it, then look, we the value of our vote is we don't vote. Then we give a message. We don't vote for them. And then we send that message. And that's how we can become a larger part of the election process and be a force to be reckoned with.
Okay, well, that's part of, are you bargaining and negotiating with your vote? I just got a question in from the audience, and I want to read the question, and then hopefully that Ernestine will be able to get some of this. Your idea is great. However, how do we get the leader of the country to even respect the candidate?
That again, Mark?
Your idea is great, is the comment. But how do we get the leader of the country to even respect the candidate? Well, that's first. I would like to say that the way that we get the attention of the leaders of the country is by that 10-to-1 ratio. When we begin to say these are our issues, and they are unified throughout the community, or unified throughout whatever region that you're located. Once those issues begin to resonate, it becomes unavoidable. The pandemic is a perfect example of what happens when there's a tidal wave or a tsunami that sweeps the community, or sweeps the nation. When we began to speak as we did in the 60s and during the civil rights movement, that tsunami for justice swept the nation, swept the world.
Mm-hmm.
But if we keep silent, not only with the vote, but if we just keep silent, then whatever the dominant or ruling class decides is going to be enacted. And then
Mm-hmm.
you begin to feel
Mm-hmm.
more and more helpless when you do not exercise your voice. You become helpless, hopeless, and then you throw up both your hands, and you're at a point where no one is able to pay any attention. So this is our fourth question.
Mark, let me.
We have,
I want to say something about that as well.
sure.
That a lot of times, as we have our issues, one of the things we're very good at is going to the rallies of the people we already support.
Yeah, we
So we
engage
don't
the
really know
campaign.
what the other person is saying because we're not in the audience. And so sometimes we can get our voices heard. To go back to the audience question, we can have our voices heard by attending somebody that we don't know much about that may have a different opinion, but they may not know what we're looking for and what we're asking for, and may be very capable and willing of giving that. Now, when you're dealing with, talk about the issue, how do we get them to respect? If that value is not in you, and if you are a person that's very self-centered and believe that you really know everything already, you really don't respect anybody's vote. You don't really respect anybody's opinion, and you spend a lot of time telling people what you're going to do and what they should do and what they should even think. And so that may not be um, something that we can control. But what we can control is getting people to listen as a group, finding the like minded individuals, and taking that issue to the candidate, calling their office, going and be the heckler if we have to be. At a rally, if they're saying things that are contrary, raising your hand and say, well, what about this idea? Have you considered this? This is going to be the tsunami effect of what you're proposing, when there may be middle ground, or there may be a whole group of individuals that are going to be if affected that they may not have even thought about. Because let's face it, we're not on everybody's radar. We really aren't, because they've already, pretty much summed up that what we're going to do. And we have to stop being so predictable. We really have to muddy the water sometime, even with the people that we really like and love, if we're not getting what we want. And that's an individual thing, but it's also generally will, stretch into, within classes or, different segments of the community. So that's the thing that I think about.
And one of the things that I remember John Lewis talked about was getting into good trouble.
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
we need to know how to use that as an effective tool. And one of the tools we can use is social media. Now,
Mm-hmm.
social media has a lot of cons to it, but it also reaches a lot of people that may never get involved at all in political discussions. Just having a discussion on an issue. You can start a subject on your post, and you get a whole thread of different opinions,
Mm-hmm.
and that has impact, particularly on younger people, because
Mm-hmm.
that's where they go to. They go to the Snapchats and the Instagrams, and they're not so much on Facebook anymore. But anyway, the social media is a very powerful tool, and we've seen it used very effectively in elections and ineffectively. So there's been both pros and cons. So this bargaining with our and negotiating with our vote is important in every aspect that we can. It's also important that we get out and do peaceful protests.
Mm-hmm.
That has an impact on the entire spectrum of not only just that politician, but on everyone else who may not know that, this is something that's important to our community, that we engaged in peaceful protest. That's why we're having so much problems with it now, because it is an effective tool. It's a tool
Mm-hmm.
that we use for decades, in the 60s, and Martin Luther King and them, they used it, and it had value and it changed things. So I think that we use what we have today, which is technology, and we also don't throw away some of the things that worked before, and that's organizing and having
Mm-hmm.
peaceful protests to say
Absolutely.
exactly as a group
Absolutely.
what's important to us and what we value.
Absolutely. And to sort of kind of tie that in, an individual, what we're actually talking about is that people need to earn our vote.
Yeah.
So when we negotiate, we're saying, tell me why I should vote for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a rhetorical question. Tell me why.
Right.
Not the classic answer, not the pat answer, not the written speech answer, but from your heart, why this is important to me. So tell me where you stand on this issue. And, I think once we start doing that, I think that, as a demographic, as individuals, in certain regions of the country, we could be taken more seriously. And, to see that, we're expecting something from you, after we vote, because part of the negotiation has to be the accountability, and we're going to hold you accountable afterwards.
Right.
One of the key factors I find that in terms of holding people accountable in terms of the political process is the fact that we have to know precisely what the job description is of each candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And while we are looking at the Supreme Court being reshaped, then why is it not being considered that term limits need to be placed on the jurists that sit on the Supreme Court?
Mm-hmm.
That lifetime appointment thing has played out. It's a change. If the president, if the president has to go in 4 to 8 years, how does a judge get to sit with their opinion for 50 years or 60 years? So there are a lot of issues that we have to raise because nobody's going to vote themselves out of a good job.
Right.
And so that's not going to happen. But as Ernestine brought out, we need to do organized protests in such a manner that it invokes the 10-to-1 ratio rule without it becoming violent. And also now that there's a number of states that are passing laws against protests.
Yeah.
And so that's a whole nother show. But we have to do that because there are 29 states already have laws in effect that render protesting where you can get a felony. And just recently, the federal government has indicted over 300 people facing terrorist charges and federal charges that can get up to life sentences as a result of the protests since May. And so there's a lot of issues that our vote is now more important than ever when it's directed at issues rather than given to a candidate.
Martin, that's a good point, and I was not aware of that. I knew there was some laws that were out there, and there were some changes, and there was some discussion about protesting. But my further question would be, again, we need to educate ourselves, on those laws to see, because teachers protested last year. Was it last year, early 2019? For higher salaries. That was a peaceful protest. So, I mean, what are the parameters that they are coming up with regard to who would be actually arrested and charged with a crime or felony for protesting? So that's something I'm definitely going to, put my finger on, after this discussion, because like I said, I was aware there was some discussion, but not that 29 states had already passed the law.
Uh,
Who knew?
I have another question from Sharon from the audience, from Sharon from Kinston, North Carolina. Her question is, in the articulation of issues, how do we approach a state level issue from a rural area?
Mhm.
Uh,
Well, part of that, I mean, I'll take a stab at it a little bit. I grew up in a rural area in South Carolina, and I can remember just educating myself, and I liked politics. I liked reading. I liked understanding what was going on, wanted to be in the know, but also, had some very active civic-minded family members with the large, discussion of the larger issues. And we developed this little youth group in our community in rural South Carolina, and on the back of God's back. And we formed the Soul Motivation Youth Club as high school students, really looking at issues that affected us in rural South Carolina, that to have a voice at the State House. Well, a lot of our teachers were from Columbia area. A lot of our family members lived there as well. And so we were able to take some of those issues to school and talk about it in a larger group. We did know some of the elected officials in our county. So for you in rural South Carolina, who is your county elected official that you could have an ear with to take that issue to the state level and begin to form in a smaller group and find the other individuals, the other voters, registered voters that would have an impact on that issue and taking it from the county to the state level.
Thank you so much. Listen, this hour has gotten away. It has gotten away. Leslie, I think Ernestine can hear you. So we're going to try to relay this. Each one of you have 2 minutes to wrap up, and then and I'll close. So if you can get Ernestine to give us her 2-minute closing, and I'll come back to her, and then you can give your 2-minute wrap up, and then we'll talk about what is it that we're going to do going forward, because this has been too great a dialogue for it to be a one-time event. We only scratched the surface of where we are.
Okay, Ernestine, you want to give us your 2-minute closing?
Okay. I'd like to say this, that the right to vote and elect your representatives without discrimination based on caste, on your class, on color, education, your race, economics, your sex, all of those things are just totally invaluable. It's priceless and it's very powerful. So regardless of who you vote for, it is most important that you participate in the process and that you become an educated voter, not just doing it willy-nilly and not letting anything be taken for granted. So that's my closing remark. It's priceless. The value is priceless, and it is very powerful.
And Ernestine, just to piggyback on that, I certainly totally agree with your assessment there. And I was thinking about the fact that the candidates know their role, and they know who and what they can impact and what they will impact. What they don't know is how we feel about that. And so, and they also, as I said earlier, they count us out in a lot of ways. And I'm talking about a broad out, okay?
Right.
Count us out, a broad version of out. So it really is very important to become knowledgeable about your Senate representative, your congressional representative from your state, even down to your mayor, your city council members. Know what those people stand for, what they believe, because what happens at a local level, generally, it really affects us even more than well, I should say even more. It affects us as much as what's happening at the national level. So being able to be in tune and be in touch and educating ourselves as best we can, so we can find out how is this going to affect me, my family, my community.
Exactly.
All right. Well, listen, ladies, hold right there. Don't go any place, ladies. I have a couple of comments from the audience. Waltrina DeFrance Dufour, how can the National Urban League, the NAACP, and churches do a better job educating and keeping us up to date on bills and policies? And that's what we were discussing. That's how we get the community involved. And we have to hold even these organizations accountable, because they say they're representing us. So we have to be able to call them out and to be our intermediary. That's the role that they've assumed. So we got to get that done as well. And also one other comment from North Carolina, I think we need to begin educating our young people to become involved in community issues, to understand how and where change is needed. This has
Uh-huh.
been fantastic, ladies. I appreciate so much the opportunity. And Leslie, thank you for being the co-host. And
Okay.
Ernestine, sorry about the technical difficulties, but we'll get that worked out. Ladies, this has been it for tonight. Wonderful. And don't go any place. I need to have you to hang around for a couple questions.
Thank you.